Welcome to Leading in Luxury, the podcast where we dive deep into the strategies and stories shaping the boutique and luxury hospitality industry. I'm your host, Daniel Renna. For those of you just joining us, we are DMR AI Hospitality Solutions, and we specialize in helping the boutique and luxury hospitality industry scale their revenue and profitability by acquiring new clients. We believe in leveraging cutting-edge technology to enhance, not replace, the human element of hospitality. Today, we have a truly distinguished guest, Jennie Yip. Jennie is a powerhouse in luxury hospitality, with a career spanning from opening hotels for Ian Schrager and the Mercer Hotel to developing F&B concepts globally for high-profile developers like Harry Macklowe. She's owned her own restaurants and hotels, and her expertise covers everything from conceptualization and kitchen design to operational setup and menu development. Jennie brings a unique hands-on perspective to crafting the entire guest experience. Jennie, it's a pleasure to have you today.
Thank you, Daniel. What a great introduction. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Your journey from Toronto to New York, Miami, and now back to Toronto with projects spanning the globe is really remarkable. Can you walk us through your path from your early days in F&B management to becoming a leading consultant in creating these wow hospitality concepts?
Sure. Well, I started probably in the early 90s in the walls of Ian Schrager at the Royalton Hotel. That was about 92. And a friend in New York City said, hey, why don't you come and apply for a job here at the Royalton Hotel. And I had inkling of hospitality. I didn't go to hospitality school. I kind of love the dynamic of restaurants and hotels. And I got introduced to Brian McNally and Ian Schrager, and they said, "Hey, yeah, why don't you come and work with us at the restaurant?" And so that's how my career started as a hostess, turning into weekend manager, to GM, to assistant F&B. And so what I learned in the early days, and this is going back into the 90s, which is still so relevant today, and I wish people still apply it, is really like the mastery of sort of like an orchestra. I mean, between Brian McNally, Ian Schrager, and Jonathan Moore, who was the GM at the time, and Jerry and Zarello, who was working with Ian at that time, running his hotels, everyone sparked this sort of magic and dynamic and their own personal networking into bring great projects. And I never knew what that was until I stepped into the walls of Philippe Stark, Hotel by Ian Schrager, and then the restaurant run by Brian McNally, who knew everyone at Condé Nast. And so this sort of molded and shaped my thinking of F&B hospitality. And I thought, God, are all places like this? And then we get Jonathan Moore, who I really learned the business. He was really my schooling of how to manage, how to take care of people. Brian McNally taught me how to take care of people and who people are and what people want, and understanding each dynamic individual, from Anna Winter coming in, Cy Newhouse, Graydon Carter, Naomi Campbell. These were our clientels on a daily basis. And so he'd really taught me how to curate every need that these people want when they come back every single time. Let's have the espresso waiting for Anna Winter. Let's get the vegan burger ready for this person. Let's get the cappuccino hot at the right temperature. So it's so interesting that from there, I continued on with the company, stayed with the company for about 5 years, and got to open the Delano Hotel on the food and beverage side in 1995. And that was another whirlwind of a setup and operation. McNally was still involved with food and beverage. Donna was a silent partner for a short period of time. Our clientele was Calvin Klein's, the Martha Stewarts of the world. It was very Hampton-like, Alice in Wonderland playground at the Delano. And it was great, Johnny Versace era. And so we curated that same spirit of the music and the design. And again, it was in the walls of Philippe Stark. And that really was my hardest job, was setting up F&B and not knowing what I was doing. Ian and Brian were like, you'll figure it out. You do such a great job here, you'll figure it out. And they really have been my sort of mentors of life in hospitality, because they came not from hospitality school. They didn't come from culinary school. Ian with his Studio 54 and his lawyer background, and Brian, who was like a kid in the East End of London, and Keith McNally, who's his brother. So they kind of get to New York and they kind of like just do their thing and naturally know people. I started my Gen Juice Hospitality in 1996, which is my consultancy. We're celebrating 30 years next month, actually. Um, and I wanted to, and I didn't know anything at the time. I was like 26 when I started my company. And I said, I want to be in the walls of like great design, great entrepreneurs, great hoteliers, people that just understand hospitality, like truly understand hospitality from the gut, not knowing where I was going with this. And so all I knew was I want to work with great chefs. I want to work with good design because that's all I knew. And also Jeffrey Zakarian was my chef at that time as well, who is a big star
Wow.
today. And he was the chef at the Royalton Hotel, who then became the chef at the Delano. So I started my company in 96 and I said, hey, this is what these are my parameters. And I started to get a lot of referrals through interior designers, actually. Philippe Stark introduced me to Christian Liaga, who then introduced me to India Madhavi. And I've done numerous projects with all of these individuals. And then in between it all, through them meeting uh, Andre Balazs, who I helped open Mercer Hotel, Mercer Kitchen with Jean-Georges Vongerichten. Prior to that, when I started my company, I went straight to Bangkok, set up five restaurants and a department store. And I kind of, again, thought, this is the same spirit and the same idea, because what we're doing is this is a building, you want five concepts in it. Delano, we had almost 11 concepts, and we're going to
Wow.
create an experience for the retailers. So I kind of knew this early that it was kind of like all the same. Shin, who was a designer in Bangkok, brought me back to New York, introduced me Andre Balazs, who had just purchased that building at 99 Mercer, and we turned that into. I headed up all F&B. So coming in, conceptualizing with Andre, selecting what chef we would want to partner with to bring this person in. We interviewed quite a few people at that time, and then brought in Jean-Georges Vongerichten, who only had his restaurant Jean-Georges up at Trump Tower, and Vong and Jojo's at that time. And he's like, "Hey, I want something downtown." I said, "You would be amazing. Let's try it." Balthazar was just about to open, so that was the early, early days. And again, working with Jean-Georges was the first time really work. I mean, Jeffrey was great, and he taught me so much in the kitchen, but Jean-Georges and his team, that was definitely different level. Like I always say to people, working with Jean-Georges is magic. I mean, his spatula is his wand, because he really conducts an orchestra in his kitchens. And I've seen it, I've seen his hotel operation at the Trump. I've seen it at Trump Tower. I've seen it in Three on the Bund, if you remember when he had that in Shanghai. He
Right.
invited me to his opening in Bellagio, and seeing that enterprise in the basement of Bellagio when he was running a bunch of restaurants there.
Crazy.
And the Tin Building. So Jean-Georges and I kind of go way back, and they've really invited me in as a family, and just so infatuated. I don't cook, so I'm always infatuated by chefs who can cook and just walk into anyone's kitchen, open it up, and say, "Hey, yeah, I can make a great meal." And that's Jean-Georges and his team. And then, along the way, after opening Mercer, I partnered with BD Moore, VD Hotels, which is Ira Drucker, Richard Bourne, who own a bunch of, I mean, they own about 45 hotels in New York City today. But we partnered together to open Townhouse Hotel. We had a 70-room hotel in Miami on 20th and Collins. And Jonathan Moore, who's the owner of Bond Street, still the owner of Bond Street today, we partnered with Jonathan to create a small boutique hotel, which he wanted to begin, which was called Jonathan Moore Hotel. 70-room hotel, sort of cheap chic. India Madhavia was a designer. And we had a great run for about 15 years on that. And then we continued to work with India Madhavi in creating a nightclub in the Meatpacking District in New York City. And then she also helped us open Condesa Hotel, which is a 40-room boutique hotel in Condesa in Mexico City, owned by the Misha brothers, Moses Misha and Carlos Couturier. And so we created this beautiful hotel, which still stands today, and it's one of the best projects ever. So again, just staying in the same realm of interior designers and good chefs. I've opened my own hotel while in Miami called Miss Yip Chinese Cafe, probably in the 2004, running on for about 10 years, and also opened another nightclub in New York, in Miami, above my Chinese restaurant called Buck 15. And so that was shortly after 9/11. And I had partners in Miami. It's like, hey, let's bring a great Chinese restaurant on Lincoln Road and a nightclub. And so we did. And so I was very familiar with Miami at that time. And then, since the openings of my own projects till today, I still consult for hotels, mostly boutique hotels, private equity firms, real estate developers, and that's grown a lot. Working with Harry Macklowe was one of the latest projects, developing One Wall Street. And again, I treat it like, sort of the same dynamic as opening a hotel, where Mr. Macklowe was like, hey, let's give the ninth floor, let's create amenities on the 39th floor for the condominium owners and create a private club. And he's a well-traveled man who had a vision of, a bit of Harry's bar, a bit of coffee to cocktails with an all-day menu. And from there, we developed the entire concept, which is quite successful today. We have Whole Foods in the basement and Printemps from Paris as the anchor retailer on the corner of Wall Street and Broadway. And
It's very
so,
cool.
yeah, it's been a great journey. And still consulting for hotels and talking to airport concession people, talking to food halls. So we still sort of dabble in quite a bit of outside of hotels as well.
That's such an amazing journey. Seriously. I mean, the whole story is just really, really cool. It spans the entire spectrum of hospitality, and you've been instrumental in creating some of the most iconic and successful F&B and hotel experiences. So you've worked with visionary developers and hoteliers, like you were saying, conceptualizing everything from in-room dining to rooftop bars and spa menus. What are the critical elements beyond just great design and food that go into creating a truly immersive and memorable luxury guest experience today? And how do you ensure that these wow concepts are not only innovative, but also operationally sound and profitable?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely starts with the people. We can all create a great product, we can all get a great chef, but the people, meaning the staff, the employees, the maitre d', the curators, are key elements in getting it right and the longevity of it. A great successful example is opening Gramercy Park Hotel with Ian. I opened that in, when did we open? 5 or so. It was like 3 years in development. Ian just bought Gramercy Park Hotel, renovated this, and we knew that we wanted something different on the hotel side and the restaurant side. And I was very lucky to be involved in the hotel conversations a little bit, just to understand the DNA of what he wanted that time around. This was slightly right before Marriott. And we created this famous Rose Bar, Jade Bar, which is adjacent to the ground level lobby, a check-in lobby, which became like the nightlife of the 2000s. And in creating, even hiring like the right front desk person to the right maitre d' to the right door person to let someone in through the bar and in through the hotel is key. And
Right.
without these people, I mean, I think what developers don't understand today is what I kind of go through on a weekly basis, Daniel, is
Okay.
educating them that people matter, that really people matter. You can hire the same person that Ian and Andre and Zuckas have hired to create hotel, but it's the people that really have to bring that hotel spirit to life. And so with Andre and Ian in the 6 hotels that I've opened with both visionaries, it's the people. We research and we find people constantly. We're always on the search of finding the right person. That it's kind of like one big chess piece, and we kind of like find the right person that could find the right that can work with this dynamic person in the same room, who come with different contacts, who come with different experiences, who come with a clientele. Some we have hired that have no idea what hospitality means, but is willing to learn. So it's always been a jigsaw puzzle in all of our operations and opening with these key hoteliers, because we believe that the people, once you teach them, and people are teachable, people want to learn. And if, as long as you open that door and you really have the trainees and the people to teach them and have the right tools, they will all succeed. I mean, yesterday I'm still talking to the same Rose Bar bartender that I hired at the Delano in 1995, who is working on a new project today in New York City, who's like, I'm going to use you as a reference and we're going to go back and talk about, opening Delano with me, opening Gramercy with me. So people come around, and if you treat people right and you sort of give them their version of what they feel that your DNA. First, we teach what the DNA looks like. Then they come back, and each of them, whether it's a bartender or a bar back, I mean, I'm always about getting feedback from staff on how to do it better constantly, and how to improve, and how the guest experience is going to flow. And that, if a chair is too, the designer designed a chair that's too low or too high. I mean, these are all conversations that I keep the door open for all of my staff. I've been director of F&B and assistant director of B about 4 times, and I believe in talking to the guest every stand up, every roundup, every round table. I want to hear from each one. And everybody has a voice because we're all in this together every single day. It's a grind every day, but we have to hear from each other. So I really believe that investing in your people and teaching your people what you want and following through, and not skimping on how to curate it, which is the difficulty that I find today. People want the standard, people want Chateau Marmont, people want Mercer, but you have to invest in people to get there. It's not like they'll design and people will come. It's the people.
Right. And
Tricky.
that's really the essence what management is. I mean, that's leadership and management. And it's really cool
Yes.
how you've really mastered the art of bringing the concept to life in that regard, where you invest in not just what you're putting together, but the people itself. In today's competitive luxury market, where guest expectations are constantly evolving, what do you believe are the biggest financial or operational challenges facing boutique hotels and F&B outlets where they are able to implement these high-end bespoke experiences? And how do you help clients navigate the quandary of achieving that wow factor without breaking the bank or compromising long-term profitability?
Yeah. I mean, since I started in hotels in the 90s, and where we are today is very different because tech has really walked in. I believe that we are still in problem with hotels running tech, because I've consulted for quite a few hotels where there's a lot of tech, but they're not using it. And that's a problem, right? Because you're lean on staff, you're giving everyone tech, meaning apps to communicate with each other internally and with guests. Someone's got to full-time manage that constantly. And there is a breakdown there. What I find with smaller hotels, like a lot of hotels I work and consulted for, are really under 150 rooms or under 100 room hotels, with the exception of maybe like the Delano and Gramercy, where they're bigger hotels, but we still treat it like boutiques. One tech at a time is what you need. I think communicating with staff. I mean, I've been in hotels now where WhatsApp is really how people are really physically communicating, and it's not all the bells and whistles of other tools. I've experienced that, and that works on quite a readily basis because there is someone constantly looking at that. Where some of the other apps, where it ties into the front desk, and front desk has to, trigger housekeeping, and these ones kind of break down a bit, and you don't get, and guests will, I mean, if you give it to guests, they will complain, right? Because they're used to sort of everything at their fingertips. So don't introduce it if you can't maintain it, for sure. I mean, I've seen that internally with some apps that, especially for revenue management, customer loyalty, where the bells and whistles are great and fantastic. But once I get into a project and figure out who is that person that's going to management or look at this every day, that becomes a job. And I think people forget that, especially developers and software. And I'm sure you get this too. There's a lot of software people out there. We talk to them on a weekly basis. But when you're in the throes of operation, be careful, because not everyone can look at that app and touch that app all the time. I still love the personality of one-on-one. Yes, the labor is, we'll add up a few more, but I think your payback is much greater, because you really will remember, like how people say, remembering the guest experience, curating a great experience. You're really hand-holding people at a certain rate. If you command a certain rate, you expect some level of service. So
Right.
your ADR has to reflect your service, and apps aren't going to fix that. AI is not going to fix that. Bots aren't going to fix that. It's still a service business and people business. So really be careful with tech in that way.
That is the challenge. I think you're absolutely right because people think that, oh, the apps are going to take care of everything I have to do in my business, but in reality, they're a tool just like anything else. Considering your hands-on experience in concept development and operational setup, where do you see AI providing the most concrete, measurable benefits for boutique and luxury hotels and F&B operations in the next 1 to 3 years? Conversely, what are the areas where believe human expertise and the physical people will remain absolutely irreplaceable? And how can AI best support those roles rather than attempting to supplant them?
Yeah. I think AI, I use AI. It's a great tool and it's a great tool to help brainstorm ideas and even creating concepts and, giving a bit of a market study, but you still really need to do the work. I think it sets up great frameworks. It keeps you organized in that way, but you still need to do the homework and adapt it to what your property needs. So
Right.
even in creating you know, basic manuals. It's good. They give you basics, but you really still really need to dig down and curate it to your own property. We use it for quite a bit of brainstorming and ideas. I have a client who only uses AI almost as an assistant. He uses it on a daily, regular basis. And so you get these great ideas, these great comps, these great, even almost aesthetics, so to speak. And sourcing, it's become useful for some things. And this one particular client uses it for all of this. But at the end of the day, someone still needs to execute this, right? So you can create all this. It's great to get it all organized and put it on paper and then hand it to me, which I've dealt with quite a bit recently. And then from there, we curate it and execute from there because you still need to source everything. You still need to figure out pricing. You still need to figure out your startup costs and your revenue and all of that. So it helps us on both sides. In the beginning, I was like, okay, well, we can create this all with AI. You can create a hotel with AI. You can create a restaurant with AI. And then once you get to the point where you want to stop using it, then we can begin that conversation, right?
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
we'll get a lot of ideas, but we still need to take the same amount of time to execute. And on the flip side of your second question, training is will never be done by robot unless that's what you want for hotels and that's what you want for restaurants. That won't be replaced. I mean, you definitely need managers and maitre d's and curators to create programming. AI can create programming, year-round programming for your business. It can probably create social media marketing for your business, but it's still the execution, right? I think social media is probably easier you can get to, but I think the physical business of serving, physical business of housekeeping and engineering and front desk as well, that just won't
The
be
nuts and bolts.
replaced if you're going to command a certain amount of
No, absolutely. Just love the way that you painted a clear picture of the complexities and opportunities in today's hospitality landscape. Now, looking at everything we discussed from concept development and operational setup to balancing innovation with profitability and integrating technology, if you had a magic wand and could fix just one thing in the boutique and luxury hospitality industry that would most significantly ensure both the creation of truly exceptional guest experiences and their sustainable, profitable execution, what would that one thing be?
Mm. When I think about hospitality, I think about the people and the managers. It's it's a tool. I don't know what I don't know if it's just one thing. There's a lot of things like in the kitchen for efficiency. Okay, that is one thing that I deal with on a weekly basis. The kitchen side of making things much more efficient. Thinking ahead, which I do tell developers now, and we're designing quite a few kitchens for some hotels, hotel F&B, as well as freestanding, is to really think of the efficiency of the logistics, the back of the house, and limiting menus. If people can listen to limit menus and not have so much waste and not have so much offering, I think that would help everybody. It would help the footprint of food. It would help the footprint of waste management, but it starts with the program of the kitchen, how to cost effectively use every piece of equipment, and listening to your kitchen designers and chefs and consultants on how to do that correctly. Because
Right.
kitchens nowadays are costing quite a bit of money, and it can be more efficient if you allow the kitchen designers and the chef and the sort of restaurant consultants to sit in the room first before you design the entire interior design of spaces. We often enter a project after everything's been designed and after the walls. Sometimes the walls have been allocated,
Right.
and they ownership and interior design architects have designed the kitchen. But if you don't get the operator in there or a chef in there to sort of look at this and study what your real concept is and what your offering will be in the future, from a three-meal restaurant to an all-day menu to one day maybe converting that same front of the house space into a nightclub or supper club late at night. You really need the kitchen to be efficient in all areas and all ways. So that's one thing I would love for everyone to be on the same page and be a part of, because that can affect your ROI much later with all the change
No,
orders
no,
and
and
moving
that's
hoods.
a
You don't
really
want to
valid
do
point.
that
I thank
at
you so
all.
much for that. Jenny, this is an absolutely captivating conversation, and your deep expertise in creating and executing luxury hospitality concepts and your balanced perspective on technology is truly inspiring. And I really thank you so much for joining us
You're
on Leading
welcome.
in Luxury. Thank you so much for coming again. To our listeners, if you found Jenny's insights as compelling as I did, be sure to subscribe to our channel and drop us a like. You can find more about Jenny's incredible work in concept development and F&B consulting in the description below. I'm Daniel Renna. See you next time. All right.